Hey, good morning. I want to try this out the microphone today because yesterday the audio was horrible and I got to figure out how to fix the camera on my computer. I want to read real quickly from the book of Ecclesiastes before I get in our story time today. Ecclesiastes 1:9. That which has been is what will be, that which is done is what will be done, and there is nothing new under the sun. In a moment, hopefully, you'll realize why I read that passage that the preacher, many think Solomon, wrote. I want to tell you a story about a nation was strong and powerful once upon a time. And then it started getting a weak, ineffectual government. Not only was it ineffectual, it was corrupt. It allowed nepotism. It said one thing and did another. There's massive inflation, food shortages, fuel shortages, shortages on all the necessities of life. The army and police forces had been demoralized and they had felt betrayed by the government. As a matter of fact, they just didn't think the government cared, and they were also ineffectual because there was no leadership. And what had happened during this time frame, a bunch of communist and socialist radicals. Oh, let me mention that a pandemic had just ran through the whole nation, killed millions worldwide. So during all this upheaval, a bunch of street thugs who were communists, socialists, anarchists began to take over parts of cities. They were robbing, beating, destroying, shooting, killing. They were using terror and brutality to begin their takeover. They figured if they started at the small level, it would eventually just take over the whole country. And they actually did take over large parts of cities and were ruling them. They weren't given authorization, they just were. And the government forces, such as the police and military, they were in a complete malaise. They felt the government would not support them, and not only that, they never got clear guidance from the government on what they were allowed to do. And many times their hands were just tied to stand back and watch this communist takeover. So they did nothing and let the violence continue. Well, some people rose up to fight against this. They were also street thugs and brawlers. But the population, because of their frustration, tacitly supported these far right-wing extremists who were doing street battles with the far left-wing extremists. All they knew is that the police and government weren't going to handle this thuggery, at least somebody was. So you got one extreme fighting for communist takeover, the far left. Then you have a far right extremist who were being applauded by the people because they were supposedly making the violence stop and protecting their property and lives. And really it's because the government refused to do its job that you had an actual civil war going on within a country that the government was ignoring and letting happen. The average citizens had to pick sides because the government offered no help. And when they did offer help, it seemed to favor the far left communist side. Whether it did or not, we don't know. But that was just the actions. When they did act, that's what it looked like from the people's viewpoint. Now here is the really cool thing that goes back to Ecclesiastes 1:9. I'm not talking about Portland or Seattle or Minneapolis in 2020 and 2021. I'm talking about Berlin and Munich in 1920, 1921. Guys, I don't know what the right answer here is. I know street fighting is not it. We saw how that happened. Antifa used the exact same flag that the communists used in Weimar Germany. As a matter of fact, the Berlin Wall, as we know it, for those of you young people who aren't taught history in school anymore, go look up what the Berlin Wall was. The communists called it the anti-fascist wall. Really what they were doing, they were trying to keep their people in because they didn't want them escaping to the freedom of the West. Nothing has changed and nothing new is under the sun. People's hearts and minds are still just as evil and corrupt as always. You see, modern communism and socialism works on the premise that deep at heart, all mankind are good and warm, loving, puppy dog loving people. Well, my Bible tells me in Jeremiah that above all the heart of man is evil and wicked and full of deceit. Who can know it but you, O Lord? But what we cannot do, if we want to see our nation last, and don't want to see even far worse come from either side, is to allow this kind of mess to go on. It is true our federal government is weak, ineffectual, and will do nothing except what pleases themselves and gives them more power, just like the Weimar Republic. We absolutely have to have local and state leaders accountable. The only hope for our nation is for states to become strong and just tell the federal government, no, we're not doing this and we are doing this. We had that right under the 10th Amendment of the Constitution. Anything not specifically delegated to the Congress or the President belongs solely to the states and ultimately then to the people. Do not be applauding either extremist group for street violence. Be knocking down your local police and mayor's offices for not enforcing the laws, and if they still refuse to, get them out of office. Because if you think the extreme right is any better than the extreme left, remember, they're the exact same group of people. They're fighting over who's going to be in power. You know what? I agree with some tenets of the Oath Keepers. Even though I'm retired, I'm still bound to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. But I cannot become a disenfranchised, disaffected person because half of the extreme far right in Weimar Germany were soldiers and police who they rightly assumed that their government had let them down and didn't care about them. They were correct in that. But those people using them cared no more about them than their government did. Man up and make your own decisions. But we can't let this go on any longer, or we have not yet seen how chaotic our country will become. Because the bottom line is, there's no difference between extreme right socialists who want to nationalize everything and extreme left socialists. Stalin admired Hitler's techniques. And Hitler actually liked the way Stalin did a few things. The only chance our country has is average people like us who may have to be bothered with getting involved in local affairs. Stop being distracted by all the misinformation and contradictory information about masks and the Pope and Afghanistan. Watch what they're doing now, because our government will throw both the right and the left under the bus to stay in power and to have control over you. And they will use both against each other as distractions. What they fail to realize, just like the Weimar Republic, one of them may end up winning. So think about that, and don't think we're any better or more sophisticated than the poor people who are just trying to survive in the Weimar Republic being pulled in a tug of war. Remember, be meek as a dove, but wise as a serpent. Have a good day, and I'll probably bug you guys tomorrow with some more video. You know what? Please like and subscribe to this channel. I'm just starting it. I don't expect to be an influencer, but I would like people to comment so we can discuss these things together. You may or may not know this, but for those who know me personally, you guys know I'm not the smartest guy in the world. So let's talk about this together. Let's find the solutions instead of having solutions forced down our throat by either the far left, the far right, or the power-hungry government. Let's do this, and even better, let's do this under the leadership of the King. God bless. Have a good day.